Hey, yo, 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 what's up, guys? It's Rich again. I'm here with part two of my Tesla Model S repair saga. Let's get this show on the road, shall we? Now, before I go any further, I wanted to tell you guys that I started a Facebook group where you guys can go buy Tesla parts, and any part that you guys need is on there. People are parting out entire cars. It's called Tesla Buy Sell Trade. Now, if you're a non Tesla owner looking to buy some parts here and there, or just generally want to waste someone's time, by tire kicking incessantly. But the group is called www.facebook.com/group/Tesla buy sell trade. And I started that group to kind of sell my Tesla parts, but more and more people started joining it. And it's a cool little community. Check it out. There's some people on there just posting general questions, and I think it's a pretty good resource for you guys to jump into the Tesla community if you don't have a Tesla. You could buy little trinkets here and there from my car or any other car that people are parting out there. So I left off in part one saying that I plugged the car in and the screen turned on, and I mean plugged into 12 volt. Now, when I say plug the car in, I mean that I hooked up a battery starter to the two front terminal posts in the car. Not plug the car in as in charge the high voltage battery in the rear fender, but it just to turn the car on because I assumed the battery was dead. So I hooked up a battery starter to the 12 volt, and I was beside myself. Just knowing that I saved about 4 grand at the time was a huge relief. And honestly, the more things that I actually worked on this car, the better off I was. Obviously, it's the more money I saved, the more I could allocate elsewhere. Okay. So when that giant screen turned on, I was in heaven. I mean, I had 3G connectivity to get map data, communicate with Tesla. All the cars are connected via 3 or 4G, by the way. And this is how it communicates back to the mothership to report back issues or faults that my friend told me about. I had the old owner's name, which was Brian. The gauge cluster showed 144 miles of range left. I mean, I was feeling great. I even browsed the internet on the MCU, which is awesome. Tesla didn't disable this car, which was fantastic. The computer worked, so I lucked out there, but more on that later. And when I refer to Tesla disabling these cars, Tesla has the authority, well, I should say the ability to remotely disable the cars. And disable, I mean they can shut off data access to the car, which makes it essentially useless, so because it can't receive new updates. And they also disable supercharging as well, so you can't use the car to charge on their network. So I don't even know if they disabled supercharging on the car. That's a different story in itself. I never quite really got there, but anyways, so there were a few errors on the car itself. I got vehicle needs service, vehicle heater needs service. Uh, Please contact Tesla. I got quite a few things. I got 12 volt battery low, and also vehicle may not charge. So considering the car was in the ocean, this wasn't that bad. I figured get a new heater, get a new 12 volt battery, and I'd be halfway there. You know what I mean? So I was feeling pretty damn good. I decided to dig a little further. I peeled back the passenger side carpet to expose the battery control module, which controls most of the functions of the car. And I stumbled upon this service bulletin stating uh, early Model S body controllers were supplied sans conformal coating and boards of controllers exposed to liquid. And this will result in an update from Tesla where they would replace the control modules with coated ones. Now, this is a key factor here. Now, what they're saying basically is Tesla knows that they put these control modules very low in the vehicle and they'd be susceptible to water damage. I mean, this is in the passenger side footwell, literally 3 to 4 inches from the bottom of the vehicle. Now, this is prone to water if you drive in a large enough body of water. So what they're saying here is that they went ahead and have a service bulletin to replace those modules with ones that are essentially waterproof, so that if water did come in contact with them, it wouldn't be game over. Now, what they're saying is the older cars didn't have this coating. So what I'm hoping is that this guy took his car into Tesla for service, and they said, "Oh, you don't have the coating. Let's go ahead and fix that." So I started peeling it back. Easy does it. Boxes look a little wet, but again, the board should be coated. The smaller box is the sunroof unit controller, by the way. So easy does it. Okay, careful, carefully, and it's shot. Okay, so that's not good. This corrosion here is extremely bad. Even if I were to take a toothbrush and baking soda and rubbing alcohol for the rest of my life scrubbing this thing off, it just wouldn't make a difference because this is just toast. I'm just asking for trouble at this point. There's no guarantee as to whether or not I could fix a lot of that stuff. Now, um, all right, so let's go to the high voltage stuff. The first half of that recording I did early in the morning and I was super groggy, so I'm sorry about that. So let's get this show on the road. Now, onto the high voltage stuff. I went out and I bought lineman gloves just in case. And these lineman gloves are good to about 1,000 volts. Now, the danger here with working with high voltage is number one, dying. And given the saltwater corrosion, there's something that may be shorted even though I cut the first responders loop. So there still very well could be high voltage going through this vehicle, even though the safety mechanisms have been put in place, but they may be disabled due to the saltwater corrosion. So there could be a short somewhere. Now, under the rear seats, this is what you see after pulling up the rear cushion. Now, there's rust here. Look at the corrosion on these aluminum boxes. Now, the large box on the left is the charger, and the smaller box in the middle with the wires going through it is the high voltage junction box. Now, this junction box distributes power to and from the battery, the drive motor, and the chargers. So, okay, wow, let's open up this box. Okay, and the high voltage junction box, that's not supposed to be there. It's not supposed to look like that. So I have to assume this junction box is toast, considering all the corrosion on the metal surfaces. Now, the good thing at least is a pressure switch at the top of this box that will disable the high voltage if the cover is removed. So that's just another safety step that Tesla's put in place to make sure that no one dies in taking these cars apart. So, but even still, even though I'm working on this car, I have to treat it as though it's live, and you just can't be too careful. So I put the lineman gloves on anyways. So to check the voltage, I have to see if basically if anything was there. So I tested the leads, and I want to make sure that there's no voltage going through the car. So I tested the voltage and I was getting 235 volts. And I threw my hands up in the air and I just went right to bed. I mean, I was beyond screwed. I wasn't prepared to deal with 235 volts of live voltage with no way to disable it. And that meant that the contactors in the battery pack were closed, meaning there was electricity flowing through the car. Now, if the contactors were open, then I'd be all set. But it looks like they were frozen closed, so this is definitely not a good thing, and this makes things 10 times more dangerous. I didn't even know where to start, so I slept on it. I woke up the next day looking at pictures from my phone, trying to figure out how I was going to get past this, and I noticed one thing. Can you guys see my mistake? Yep, exactly. Those little dots right there. That's millivolts. So yeah, here we go. There's less power than a double A battery in there. Now, I don't know if I was tired or what, but the forum, they let me have it for sure after that one. They were like, you idiot. But you know what? Rightfully so. That was a boneheaded mistake, reading the wrong voltage and not looking for the symbols. But there was no voltage in there, and that was definitely good, so I could definitely, move forward. Now, uh, I took the top cover off the charger itself, and there's a rubber seal at the top preventing water from getting in. Well, most water, but it was still useless because I know that water did get in there. And to me, any water that got in there into this component was instant trash for me because this component's so important. There's literally hundreds of volts going through this charger box, and it wasn't even worth risking anything. So this had to be trash. Now I picked it up to look underneath, take a look at the coolant lines underneath the chargers, and boom, look at this salt, 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 and more salt. I mean, look at the size of salt crystals on this car. It's amazing that there was this much salt in here. I don't know how long the car was underwater for, but apparently it was for a while because this amount of salt penetration is something that's rarely seen. Now, one of my favorite things was getting everything out of the car. Throwing the carpets away was awesome. It reeked of mold. There were tons of sticks and leaves in the car. There was standing water in the air vents. And look at all that salt residue left behind. All the white stuff in the car is essentially salt residue. And I removed the door panels as well because I had to inspect each door motor to make sure that there wasn't any corrosion there. Um, and that's important too because the last thing you want is to have this car, 3 or 4 years down the line and realize none of your windows go up and down because you didn't take the necessary steps to remove the motors that weren't working. So again, I took the door panels off, inspected each door motor to see whether they were corroded or not. Uh, Obviously, that'll lead to premature failure if they were submerged. And also, all the speakers on the passenger side were exposed to water. Because if you, I'm going to show you guys in a second, but uh, if you look at the way the car was submerged, every single thing on the passenger side was destroyed more than the driver's side because the car was actually in the water at an angle. So every speaker on the passenger side had to be replaced, including the subwoofer in the trunk. Now, so I clean up the sticks in the air vents, and I move on to the heating system, which the car was also complaining about. Now, here's a picture of the car. It's located to the sorry, here's a photo of it in the car, and it's located to the right of the computer screen behind the dash. And here's a pic of it removed. You could see where the water line was. It wasn't all the way submerged, but still high enough to mess things up. And now look at this. Now I moved my way back to the subwoofer in the trunk, and this is a perfect viewing of how high the water level was, and it made an ideal line right in the center of the subwoofer to show you just how high the water level got. Um, that had to be trashed, by the way. That no longer worked. So working my way to the front of the car under the MCU is the airbag control unit and air suspension control unit. Now let's see how these look. Okay, terrible. Moving on. Now look, how dangerous is this? Now these things could have shorted and the airbags could have popped in my face at any time, just killing me. So I don't want you to think for a second that this is easy, lightweight work here. There's a lot of precautions and a lot of things you have to keep in the back of your mind when you're doing a project like this. So, if you look at the inside, there's some details of the interior. Like everything is done here. Look at the mold on the seat belt and igniters. There's mold spores on the passenger belt. Everything had mold or corrosion. I mean, everything. So I said, screw it. If the seat belts are this bad, which sit higher than the actual motor, what does the actual motor look like? So I said to myself, I might as well remove the motor as well, also known as the drive unit. So it's actually pretty easy to remove. There's no grease, no oil, no stains, nothing like that. It's actually an absolute joy compared to a regular internal combustion engine car, also known as ICE car, aka cars that take gas. So the only thing that sort of annoyed me was the fact that the coolant kept burping out, but I didn't really lose that much coolant. It made things much easier because I've already removed the high voltage battery cables from the junction box. So, spilling coolant everywhere wasn't that big of a deal. Um, to remove the drive unit in the Tesla Model S, you have to, one, remove the lower shock bolt from the suspension, two, slide the caliper out of the way, remove the plastic shield under the drive unit, remove the share plates near the battery, unclip 4 connectors, remove coolant lines, uh, and remove the 4 subframe bolts, and then drop the drive unit. So I'm kind of oversimplifying things here, but those are the basics. I love to dilly dally, so it probably took me about 3 hours. It should have taken about no more than an hour. But keep in mind, I'm doing this in a narrow home garage with nothing but basic hand tools and jacks, so you have to give me some credit here. Now, I should have had the car on the ground and then raised it up off the drive unit, but the car is already on jack stands, and it's not quick by any means getting this car down, because remember, each side has to go down incrementally because this car is super heavy. Now, this is likely how the battery will come down as well. I could be the first person to remove a Tesla battery pack in the garage with no lift and basic hand tools, but who cares? I'm not getting an award for that, I'm sure. Um, okay, bam, that's out. So let's look at you could see now that it's gone. I had no way of testing the motor, so I assumed it was shot, and it wasn't worth the risk of me applying 3 to 400 volts and having it blow up in my face. And I didn't feel like taking it apart either, so I knew I was going to sell it as is to someone that was interested in opening it up. Now, there's sticks and twigs on top of the pack, uh, along with corrosion of the aluminum, and with all that, the pack had to come out too. It was just too dangerous. Remember, my friend said that you know um, there were errors in the battery pack before the car died, but also I was told by Elon Musk himself that you know the car could be used as a boat for short periods of time. Okay, so who's telling the truth here? Are there really 30 faults in the pack? Did water get into the pack? Was Elon Musk right in saying that it's waterproof and maybe the water just got to a few sensors on board in the car and it freaked a few things out? I don't know. So you jack the rear of the car up, okay? So it sits on top of the dollies, and this is how you remove the battery pack. You undo 8 bolts on each side of the pack, and then another, I don't forget how many in the middle, maybe 8 or 9 in the middle, and the pack essentially just slides right out. You know, um, Now I'm posting all of this infinitely fun and relevant stuff on the forum, and wouldn't you have it, the old owner actually found my post, and he said this. He said, "I'm almost positive you have my total Tesla Model S. It was a 2012 black S85 with tan interior and panoramic roof. It was totaled during the nor'easter in Sea Isle City, New Jersey last October. It was not a fun day. Fortunately, it was totally covered by insurance, and now I have an upgraded 2015 Model S with all-wheel drive and autopilot. So I think I made out okay. Unfortunately for you, I think you have a mess on your hands. There was smoke coming from the engine when it failed, and electronics were failing all over. It was a scene out of a movies with things moving up and down on their own and freezing, like the front driver's seat. I'll enclose a pic for your records." So that's the photo that he sent to me. He sent a couple photos, which is actually really cool. So, this is awesome. Um, he he This is how I knew that my thread was coming more and more popular. I was at the 375 to 400,000 views at this point in that thread, and he actually found it, which was crazy. So, um, but that's the picture of the car that he gave me, so I could see how it was sitting in the water. And unfortunately, the water line wasn't very high, but everything that was worth anything is below that water line. The pack, the motor, all the electronics sit below that line. So that's literally the worst place that the car could have been submerged. Um, so this is what the side of the battery pack looked like. It was just all rusted, so that's fair because it was sitting in salt water, so that's all right. Now, in order to remove the battery pack, I purchased a 12-foot section of 4x6 wood, cut it into two pieces. Uh, I put the wood on dollies that I bought a long time ago, slid them under the battery pack, and I used two jacks with crossbeam adapters that I also happen to have. And I used two jacks with the adapters to push against the battery. I undid the bolts slowly, and I lowered the battery pack onto the dollies with the wood. Okay. Now, I brought this part down, but I have to laugh at this because the rapid mate was fused to the battery pack due to the saltwater corrosion. You know, I took the front cover off, and there's no water in the back of the pack. So I'm like, awesome. It's dry as a bone back there. I put the voltmeter up to the contactors, and I detected over 200 volts at the back of the pack. So there's definitely voltage in there. I removed the BMS. Uh, there's a picture of the battery management system. Now, there's over 200 screws that hold this pack together. So after undoing those for a few hours, I used my engine crane to pry up uh, uh, the cover, because the cover is screwed and glued to the car, which is insane. But it was nuts. it was just it was something else. So that's where I left off with that. Um, you know, that's as far as I'm gonna take you guys for version 2 because I have a lot more cool stuff coming up in version 3. In terms of what was in the pack. I made a new friend as well. We're getting close to over the 20-minute mark here. I made a couple new friends on the forum, and I got some visitors, which is actually kind of neat too. But stay tuned for part three. Part three is going to get really interesting. A lot of cool stuff in part three of me taking out the pack. But stay tuned. Don't forget to like, share, and subscribe, and all that good stuff. But stay tuned for V3.